All right, hello, friends. Welcome to Trending. Today is Thursday, June 15th. It's about 9:45 as we're recording this morning. Thanks to you watching or listening to our podcast. Grateful for all of you. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm all right, man. I was telling you, before we started, I cannot get rolling today. I was a little lethargic. I think it's summer. It's busier.
Yeah.
And it's just catching up, man. Here's how bad it was this morning. So I got up, did the workout, got the breakfast ready for everybody. Took a 10-minute snooze before the shower. I was like, man, I need some more sleep. I don't know where I'm going to get it. So Amazon Prime today, give me some more sleep.
Nice. Nice.
So
I'll try to stay awake for the next little bit at least.
That's right.
As we crank through a couple things.
I need this caffeine to hit.
Okay. Let it roll. Let it roll.
Maybe so.
Okay. All right, Joe. Well, you and I were talking beforehand. Again, there's, as always, a lot going on in the news today. But we've noticed kind of this trend the past, few weeks, few months, I guess a couple of years even, that right now one of the top documentaries on streaming is this show, Happy Shiny People. Is that right?
I think so.
Shiny Happy People?
Yeah.
Whatever
I think it's Happy Shiny People.
Happy Shiny People. Yeah. There's also, I think there's actually two different documentaries about the Hillsong Church in New York and some of the stuff that's happened there. Past couple of years, there's been the huge podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. There's been a few other kind of similar things where pretty popular culture, media things have come up about Christianity, about faith, and some of the kind of scandals, I guess, for lack of a better word, that have come up. And right now, those are some of the hottest shows on TV right now, are the shows that are kind of diving into these things. So there's a lot to talk about there. We, of course, our goal is not to, like you've mentioned before, we're not trying to dunk on anybody. We're not trying to slam anybody. We're not trying to put anybody down. At the same time, it's also interesting that this is just happening in culture. A lot of people are watching these shows and talking about them. So let's at least talk about it a little bit and throw our perspective in a little. Mm-hmm. So, Joe, I haven't watched anything about the Happy Shiny People. I've watched the first episode of the Hillsong doc just to kind of know what was going on. I guess, for one thing, it is just interesting that there's a lot of Christian news and culture at the moment, not great news. But I guess have you watched any of those documentaries, or what, as you're kind of hearing about them, what are some of your main takeaways?
I mean, there's a lot we could try to unpack here, and obviously trying to say something more in the moderate, down the middle of the fairway perspective on the idea. I think we there's obviously a mixed bag by any of these artifacts, these things that are produced. I think on the one hand, we could be tempted to say, this is just another attempt at a takedown of people and their religion in America. Obviously, there's a group that wants to, put Christianity in some sort of a light where we can't trust it any longer. So maybe something else can replace its influence, right? Yeah. I just think if this is where I think a good panorama of church history is helpful, because even before Christianity was, something worth writing home about in regards to a global perspective, when Christianity is still a pretty small, insignificant group of people, growing as it was. I mean, it grew from its very first days. Yeah. But people were, they didn't understand some things about Christianity. Mm-hmm. Sometimes Christianity was misunderstood. Yeah. Other times there were some serious, credible attempts to take down Christianity and its influence in the early Roman Empire. They look at Celsus and some of these perpetual opponents of Christianity, and apologists like Justin Martyr and the rest had to figure out a way to defend. Yeah. So this is not something that's new. Mm-hmm. Take it or leave it. There are some people who they just like to challenge stuff, and they're critical. It's more significant than that. Mm-hmm. And so there might be the sense where this is a way for us to take some jabs at Christianity. I think also this is a way for some people to tell their story. There are some people who've been wounded by particular people, and who represented Jesus or a church or a ministry in one way or another, and their story was covered up, or maybe it was refused to be told or brought to the light. Mm-hmm. And because of that, not only were they wounded in the moment, but they're also wounded by people not taking them seriously, or deliberate attempts to try to discredit them so that their story wouldn't come out, right? Mm-hmm. And now this is their day to actually share their story. There's healing in that. And there's other people probably like them who sat in obscurity, shrouded in darkness for a long, long time. And if their story gets out there, it gives them a chance to heal and to move on, and to maybe take some actions for their own restitution as well. So this is a mixed bag here. There seems to be a bumper crop at this time. And so I think one of the questions we have to grapple with is, as Christian people, what shall we do with these things? One of them just came up in the office this week, and everybody, like, it kind of gathered people, and people were saying, "Oh yeah, I watched that too, and this is what I thought." And back in the day, I remember this person, being recommended, and so on and so forth. And so I think there's just something in the air. I think if we zoom out and say, okay, why is all this happening? I think there's a mixed bag there. But I think it's worth, like, for you and I who do church work and those who are interested in what's going on in life at the church, like, when I think about the zoom back, and I kind of move beyond just like, I felt like this documentary was helpful, or I thought this was interesting, or I thought this was extreme. Like, to say, okay, why is this a moment where this stuff is being put out there, and it's giving a lot of steam? I think that's something worth kind of grappling with. Like, why now, and what is its usefulness for now and for later? So I think those are the things I kind of think about when all this is going on.
And it's a hard balance, right? Because, like you said, like, for the people who are legitimately hurt by one of these kind of strange sects of Christianity that did some bad things, or some bad people who did some bad things, like you said, they deserve justice. Their stories deserve to be told. Absolutely. And I guess at one point, does it become gossip? At what point is it helpful for us to watch? Is it like voyeurism for us to get an inside scoop to people's lives that really we don't have any business? I think that's kind of where I wrestle with is, we need, these people deserve justice, and we want them to have justice. But at least personally, I watched the first episode of the Hillsong doc. I haven't watched any of Happy Shiny People. Like, there's part of me that's just like this isn't. Do I need to watch this? I feel just a little weird getting that close to something that I'm not sure if I need to be that close to. So I guess, do you think it's helpful, or is there any danger in this becoming entertainment? I mean, you're just kind of wrestling. You're saying it's a wrestling match. How do we decide? I guess what would you say if someone watching is aware of these films, these documentaries, but they're not really sure if they want to watch them or not? Like, is it helpful? What would you say? Yeah,
so I think 1 Thessalonians 4 or 5 gives us just a great formula for about all matters, which is cling to what is good and avoid evil. And so what is the profitable thing, and what is the stuff that can be left behind? I do think that if someone has been wounded by a ministry or a person, and there's been cover up, and they've been marginalized, they've been silenced, I think there is something powerful about just a nameless, faceless, big group of people standing behind you saying, we are with you. Like, you are not insignificant or invisible. Be empowered to, have your day to seek that restitution. So I think there is something powerful about raising awareness to help that person in that moment, even if you'll never meet them, to say that I am, for a person who's been wounded and traumatized, I think one of the things that you work through is, am I crazy? Like, did this really happen to me? And people standing with you to empower you to seek your healing and your repair. I think that's important. I think it's also, it allows us an autopsy to see, can we prevent this from happening again? I think that was what was powerful about the rise and fall of Mars Hill, is this wasn't, some people claim that this was Christianity's attempt to try to get back into notoriety after maybe slipping in influence. People could even have claimed that this was Cosper's way of making a name for himself or whatever. But I think what it did effectively is that it gave an autopsy for, if a church decides that we are going to scale up and grow and to gain influence and to be a bigger ministry, that there are certain things that we have to avoid because sometimes there is a grave cost at wanting to scale at all cost, right? Lives are ruined. Leaders can kind of transform into something that doesn't embody what we think is a faith-filled leader. And so those things are important. So I think that standing with victims is obviously a good thing about this. And then also doing an autopsy. How can we prevent something like this from happening again? I think those are the responsible things from these documentaries. To the extent where they are used as a voyeurism, I think it's something to be avoided. And it's almost kind of weird bringing this up. I think it applies here. The very first episode of the Black Mirror show franchise on Netflix is an example of this. Just a disclaimer, it is a hard episode to watch, and I think they made it that way for a reason, because it does kind of tease out and expose how there's something within our human communities where we do like to see somebody in power, someone with notoriety, embarrassed. Yeah. And we should be quite uncomfortable with our appetite to see something like that. Yeah, and there's a fine line between exposing something so we can be better, or exposing something so that we can enjoy somebody else's downfall. Because I think psychologists and sociologists would say this too, like that we get some sort of a benefit out of watching somebody else fall. We don't have to look inside ourselves. We don't have to reckon with what's missing in our own lives or what we need to deal with in our own lives when we're busy looking at other people and watching their lives instead of actually taking note of what's going on in our own. And so I think this is where Nietzsche, we've mentioned Nietzsche before, but he said, be careful if you chase monsters, because if you stare in the abyss, like you might actually become one yourself. And I think that's one of the dangers, one of the shadows of some of this genre of entertainment, this genre of media is we can actually turn into people who are highly critical. And who just like relish at people's downfalls. Right. And I think that's something that the scripture would recommend, that we shield ourselves from that. I think the language that the scripture gives actually like don't give license to this sort of thing. And we see this even happen like in a minor way, like whenever you're getting a higher level degree, you have to start to criticize other people's work in a part of the world that you're also becoming an academic in. And I think what you see at times is once you're given the license to critique other people's work so that you can gain an edge for you to say something new to a discussion, like it needs to be checked and monitored, because next thing you know, like you feel like you got license to criticize everything. And we just become one complaint and hot take after another, and we reduce ourselves to being highly opinionated, and a person who lacks grace. And I think that's one of the shadow sides of this type of exposing ourselves to these types of media. So, anyways,
I think the other benefit that I can see is I do think it's wise for those of us who are outspoken Christians, for people like you and me who are friends and know we work at a church, we're known to be Christ followers. I do think it's helpful for us to know what culture at large is saying about Christianity. So, like, for example, if you watch the Happy Shiny People, and so you know what some of the dangerous teachings that are involved in it's about the Duggar family and some of the beliefs they had. So you can say, oh yeah, if one of my non-Christian friends watched that, I could say, there are some Christians who believe that, but let me show you what I think about that. Or here's what Ridgepoint actually says about some of those things. Or like Hillsong, like their leaders did some horrible things. They tried to cover it up. Here's what we do to try to not get ourselves in that situation here at Ridgepoint. And Pastor Brent, Pastor Joe, they've got an open door. You can talk to them anytime. They're not these celebrity pastors that you keep seeing and hearing about, right? And it's also interesting, I think, I listened to another podcast where they're having a similar conversation, and they pointed out that a lot of these shows are made by non-Christians, so they don't really get Christian culture. They don't get the Bible. So the first episode of the Hillsong doc, they're kind of trashing Hillsong for asking people to donate their time to help set up for events and stuff. Like, no, like volunteering is part of being a Christian. Like, we're supposed to help out the local church. Or they kind of slammed Hillsong for asking people to tithe. Like, this crazy church asked people to give away 10% of their income. But we actually do believe that. Like, that's in the Bible, right? Yeah. So I think that's one benefit, is we can kind of know what we believe, how that stands with what culture is thinking about Christianity, so we can have an informed conversation if they come up in the wild. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's helpful. We can say, yes, we do tithe, and here's why. But no, we don't do what the Duggars and Hillsong do. Here's what we do, and here's why we do it different. So I think having an informed opinion is one of the really helpful parts of this kind of conversation. Yeah, and I think it just highlights, once again, this interesting process that we have in modern religion. So modern religion is trying to be faithful to an ancient tradition. It comes from a different world, not our own. Yeah. Or around a watching world that might misrepresent or misunderstand some of the things because they're not inside the culture or not.
But we also need to be aware that sometimes the outside perspective can bring clarity, because as insiders we can have myopia, and we just might not be quite aware how weird we can be sometimes, and I think so it's also a rather helpful way to check what's going on within, so that we can have this more of a, honest picture about who we're growing into, who we are becoming as a corporate entity. And I just think that it helps us, like you said, on, in the wider conversation about religion, we could say, okay, that's not all Christianity. We can't, just like we wouldn't paint another religion with the same brush, even though we're tempted to do it at times. We would hope that y'all wouldn't paint Christianity with the same brush as well, so that we could bring that nuance. But I think also this affords one more thing, and this is a hard thing to do, is to say, when we mess up, we do need to apologize. I think in our credential culture, the modern West, where people don't give you a lot of slack, where there's not a lot of room to make mistakes. When a mistake is made, we are aware and maybe afraid that we won't be given a second chance. And so I think there is a temptation for these groups, these ministries, parachurch organizations to cover up the mistakes so that we don't lose our platform. And unfortunately, one of the most beautiful dialects of the Christian faith is apology and seeking forgiveness and asking for mercy. It's the very first thing that we do when we come into the faith, is we have to say, I need you, God, because I know that I'm not enough. Like I need you to save me, to rescue me. I'm a sinner, and so to lose that dialect along the way is a harsh reality. It's something that it really does hurt our corporate witness. I think that there is something to be said about the value of being lowly and humble and admitting mistakes, and then hoping that you get a second chance because you've been open and upfront and honest about it. And this is something I think that we see even in some of our favorite TV shows. Some of the most powerful moments of the shows and the movies that we like are when someone is just upfront about how they have fallen short, and when someone in their life or someone who they've let down extends forgiveness to them. And what a beautiful moment that is. That always hasn't been a value in world civilization. But it certainly is in ours. And I think it's one of the gifts that Christianity actually has brought to our culture. And so I think it's something that we need to be the best at. Maybe that's a weird way to say it. We should be the most natural at owning up to something that we've done that's hurt other people. And then alongside that say, not only do I want to ask for your forgiveness, but I do want to find constructive ways to get better and to try not to repeat this offense. And so I would appreciate your help along the way in regards to that, yada, yada, yada. So I think that's another one of the benefits of something like this.
I agree. We want truth to prevail. We want to be humble, not be putting ourselves in business we don't need to be a part of. But I also think if people are really living out the teaching of Jesus, it's really attractive. So anytime that there's something weird that comes out that's icky and gross, it's not really the teaching of Jesus. So I think if we're familiar with some of the things that are kind of putting a bad spin on things, it's good for us to know that so we can try to be a really great counterexample to what Christ actually taught. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, man, crazy stuff, man. You never know what's going to pop up here.
I know, man.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I mean, it's Father's Day weekend coming up, so to all the dads out there, happy Father's Day too. Hopefully you get a chance to enjoy it with your families or do whatever you want. One of the things that we have learned in church attendance trends is that Mother's Day is usually a really high attended day. It's like right up there with Christmas and Easter, right? Because moms typically want to go to church and they want all their people with them, Dads, it's because it's the middle of summer too, but Father's Day is kind of a lower attended day. We haven't seen it here though. Like we've seen actually Father's Day be a strong attended day. We've got a few fun things in the lobby, things planned for the day. So we hope that you'd come if you're here in town. I think it'd be worthwhile, obviously, to come worship, but also be with the family of God here on your Father's Day.
Yeah. Dads, we do have a few kind of fun special things planned for you. So we hope to see you on Sunday, either in person or online. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for watching and listening. Have a great day, everybody.
See you next time.